Just as the Willys Jeep was instrumental in the liberation of many countries in Europe during World War II, you can liberate yourself by becoming a subscriber to the Audrain Museum Network. Do it right now.
Yeah, and if you don't subscribe, I'm literally going to pull up in this Willys Jeep and liberate your entire household. So just subscribe and make it easy on all of us.
Make it happen. Hello and welcome to the Audrain Automobile Museum and our exhibition, History, Luxury, Sport, Automobiles in Newport. In this highlights video, we're going to take a deeper look at three vehicles which were prize winners in the Audrain Newport Concours d'Elegance. And to help me do that, I'm joined by my friend Ben Chester. Hello, Ben.
Thank you, Donald. Good to be here. And
we're going to look at a car from the 1960s, one from the 1970s, and one from the 1940s. And we're starting with the 60s simply because you don't want to ever pick a favorite anywhere. However, all of us here on staff, most of our visitors in the gallery, their eyes are immediately drawn to this magnificent Pontiac. A very rare thing, a 1961 Pontiac Ventura sports coupe. And what do you think of this car, Ben?
I am starstruck by this car. Being sort of a predecessor to an American muscle car, it doesn't have the sort of shape and aura that you might expect from a car built by Pontiac in this era. So things or features like the convex windshield, convex rear window, these A-pillars, everything about it is just curvaceous, and I think that is really unique from other American, V8 athletic vehicles of the time.
And it comes from a time as well that even in the GM family of cars, where obviously the cars shared certain platforms, certain frames, the differentiation between the brands was really quite great. In fact, it came from a time when the great Bunky Knudsen, who this is his last year at Pontiac, he would go on to run Chevrolet after this, he pioneered the idea of Pontiacs as performance cars and the famous wide track Pontiacs. You can't imagine today with shared platforms that this car actually has a track 2 inches wider than the Chevrolet, whose chassis it shares, and 1.5 inches wider than the Plymouth. So it wasn't just marketing hype, it was actual engineering. This is also the first year they went with a perimeter frame rather than the X cross frame. So the cars could sit lower on the frames, and the standard Detroit thing is sort of longer, lower, wider. But the 61 cars, including the Pontiacs, were actually narrower and lighter and shorter, but lower. So they were lighter in weight. They were almost 200 pounds lighter than the 1960s. And with the big engines they put in these cars could fly.
Yeah, these cars certainly had enough muscle, to get them moving to wherever you wanted to go at any rate. But yeah, the design was absolutely amazing. Everything about these just worked well. The proportions fit. It makes sense. And there were some real technical innovations too, like the inboard drum brakes, which are sort of built into the wheels in a way. So it's really an amazing car once you start to pick it apart.
The famous Pontiac 8-lug wheels, which when I was a kid, I thought these were the coolest wheels on earth. Kragers were nice, but these factory 8-lug nut wheels were absolutely amazing. And also that these cars were very successful as racers. In 1961, Pontiacs won 21 NASCAR races. Absolutely extraordinary. And actually, Pontiac won more races, but some of them were won with 1960 cars. So it's, which is also something unimaginable today. It's like, we won some of the races with the current car and some with the old car. But I digress. You mentioned the style of the windshield and the rear window. And these, of course, are the famous bubble top coupes, a 1-year offering from General Motors across all the lines, and they're just absolutely amazing. And one of the other things about the proportions, you mentioned proportions, which I think is great. At this period of time, when you looked at a catalog for the manufacturers, these great artists drew these incredible impressions of the cars, which were always much wider and longer and lower than the cars in real life. these Pontiacs were the only cars that looked like they did in the brochures.
Right.
And that was amazing to me.
Right.
You know,
Right.
It's, wow, this is actually the way they looked in the catalog.
It truly is. And to me, it truly does resemble a concept car. Some of these details, when you admire them in person, thinking especially from a modern day standpoint, let's say you cracked this windshield. I could not imagine trying to find a replacement or, you know, any of the details on this car. But standing here talking to you, Donald, you can see how short the hood is. It's not this extended front hood, and it seems like the engine probably fits pretty snugly in there without much extra room, which is almost refreshing from a car from the period.
And you mentioned the entire sort of show car aura. One of the other things that this color is extraordinary.
Yeah.
It really suits the car very well. And things like the tricolor interior.
I was just going to say, the interior is stunning with the different color leathers, the logos, how the steering wheel is almost transparent with some leather on the hand grips. Amazing detail. It's amazing Pontiac built this. And they didn't build it in big numbers, and which is why you don't see them very much, but absolutely stunning car that almost resembles a Chevy Impala on steroids.
Exactly, and the Ventura sat in the Pontiac line just above the Catalina and below the Star Chief and the Bonneville, although the Star Chief and the Bonneville had longer wheelbases. So some Ventura models like this one actually cost more than a Star Chief, which was sort of the long wheelbase, less expensive Bonneville. And this would be the last year for the Ventura as a standalone model. It became just a trim level, a higher trim level on the Catalinas after this. And I've got a personal connection as well with Pontiacs. My family didn't buy their first car till I was 12 years old. Living in New York City, you don't need a car. And when my father had to buy a new car because his job moved from New York to northern New Jersey, my brothers and I knew exactly what he should buy: a Peugeot 404, Pininfarina design,
of course,
really absolutely wonderful. And he went out and looked at the Peugeot, took it for a drive, then went to the Pontiac dealer and bought a 1967 Pontiac Catalina 4-door hardtop in electric blue with a black vinyl top, because he said it was a car that had far more stylage than the Peugeot. And this Ventura is a car that Earl Osborne would definitely declare had stylage.
Yes.
This is extraordinary.
Absolutely, absolutely. Admiring it in person, it's absolutely amazing. And already a number of people have come off the street to see the show just because of this car. So we're very, very happy that Mr. Goldstein of the Piston Palace has led to us for the show.
Extraordinary. Great looks, 303 horsepower, lots of get up and go. And speaking of get up and go, we're going to see a car which also hits the eyes and it's got a lot of power.
Yes, it
and
does.
It's rare. So
That's
let's
true.
go look. This is one of my favorite cars in the exhibition. I keep saying that, but you know, this exhibition is filled with favorites.
I don't blame you.
And one of the reasons why is that this car was the People's Choice Award winner in the concours. And the People's Choice Award really means a lot to me because, you know, making sure that the tastes and interests of our visitor guests is recognized, I think, is a really important thing in any concours. And the fact that they chose this car, I thought, was spectacular, because when I walked into the field in the morning and I saw this car, I thought, wow, this is amazing.
And also, this comes from Philip and Grace Reutman, and we're very grateful for them lending it to us.
This car is also very much sort of a car of my first driving youth. This is when I started to drive, around the time this car was new. And a 73 Buick is a really, really cool thing. The first car I actually drove when I had my license was a 73 Buick Centurion convertible, which also shared the 455 Wildcat engine, which is found in this car. But, of course, in typical muscle car fashion, this is an intermediate with that big engine. So the Grand Sport Stage 1 is a very big deal in terms of performance.
Yes, it is.
You're waiting for me to say the name of the car.
Yeah, I was waiting
for me to say the name of the car. Okay, I will satisfy you because
and then I'll go.
I love the name of this car, as you well know.
Yep.
It just brings such a smile to my face. The Buick Century Grand Sport Stage 1 Colonnade Sun Coupe.
It's an amazing name, Donald, and I was waiting for you to finally say it, because even though the name is so long, the car is bigger. And this is a fantastic car. It is a rare car. We'll talk about all the special options it has. But yeah, this is the time of my dad's youth as well. So this is the car, you know, type of vehicles my dad grew up with. He's a General Motors head. So something like this is what you'd probably see, you know, somewhere in Sharon, Mass, in the era, owned by someone like my dad's father. So yeah, not in this specification, of course, usually in a more common specification, but very cool to see it here in the museum. And a lot of people might say it's out of place or think it's out of place,
Oh, no.
but we're here to kind of turn you otherwise.
Absolutely. Again, what makes a car in a collector world interesting?
Yeah.
Rarity, beauty, and usability. This car is certainly rare. This particular model, the Sun Coupe, with the Stage 1 455 engine, they only made 45 of them. 36 automatics, of which this is one, and 9 manuals. So this is a very, very rare car. And anyone who has never driven one of these 455s in a high state of tune, you put your foot in this car, flies. 510 foot-pounds of torque, a number not beaten until the Dodge Viper.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a Buick. So you think, oh, well, you know, it's some old guy's car. No. It may have been an old guy's car, but it's a fast old guy.
Yeah, and like you said, usability is the main focus for a car like this, in my opinion. You know, this is not a car where, you know, the 25-year-old enthusiast takes it out to an autocross. This is not a car where you're going to a track day. However, let's say you're a collector. You have a handful of cars at this point. This is a car you take your whole family out. You go out for the day. You go out on a road trip. You have wafting speed. You have plenty of torque. And you can basically go wherever you want without breaking down. You can actually collect cars that don't break. These cars are bulletproof. They'll last you forever if you do basic maintenance. So, fun car for the family, also finds its way into the museum, which is really special.
And one of the great things about the Sun Coupes is their electric sunroof, electric sliding sunroof, which was very unusual for an American production car at the time, and these were outsourced to ASC, American Sunroof Company, to make. And it also gives it that, just a bit, we were always looking back in this period for that sort of little European edge. And it gives it that European edge that, you know, you really want to see. Plus, there was something really terrific about these colonnade coupes with the C-pillar with a big window in it. You know, it also gave the car a certain lightness that you also associated. You know, we just talked about the wonderful bubble top cars. By the time the 70s have rolled around, safety requirements began to say that, you know, you can't really have those super thin A and C pillars, and two-door hardtops had almost disappeared completely. So you have a car like this that gives you that impression of lightness. Plus there was this aspect of the 1973 Buicks, which I think is so incredibly Newport, is the fact that they have this wonderful sweeping line from the fender to the back of the car that reminds you of a boat, a speedboat at sea. And it's just such a neat thing.
It absolutely does. And I think it's really such a good representative of the People's Choice Award, because I fear that a lot of people attend these events and become overwhelmed with so much they are unfamiliar with. So this is a car that not only is everyone familiar with, but it stands out in a crowd of amazing cars on the concours field. Being such a rare, special, yellow Buick, it's impossible to ignore anywhere.
And what's great about it too is that it helps to expand the level of interest and knowledge of people, because they say, gee, why is this Buick Century here? Oh wait, it's a Buick Century Grand Sport. Oh, okay, it's a Buick Century Grand Sport Stage 1. Oh wait, it's a Sun Coupe Stage 1 Grand Sport Century. So, you know, this car to me stands quite proudly in a company of Duesenbergs, Packards, Ferraris, whatever you might want.
Of course. And we always talk about the story behind the car. And like you just said, I can imagine someone coming up to this car and saying, why is this here? The answer is in the name.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of the name, and you and I have had conversations here on the Audrain Museum Network about Jeeps. We're going to see a really, really neat Jeep that tells 3 terrific stories. Let's take a look.
This might be my favorite.
Well, we are no longer in a Pontiac Ventura, and we're not next to a Buick Sun Coupe. So where actually are we? Are we liberating Europe?
Yes.
Or going to the beach?
You can go anywhere in this thing, Donald.
This is absolutely fantastic. This is 1947 Willys CJ2A, the first of the civilian Jeeps, is quite a marvelous thing. And also, it's very interesting. The story of this particular Jeep is very interesting because after its wartime life, the Jeep found a new home in civilian life, but in a very utilitarian way, much as it had been used in the military. This particular one was sold to a surveyor in Kansas, new.
Yep.
And you can just imagine, going around the Kansas prairie and the rough lands and this, the perfect thing, and something that a lot of servicemen, just like those servicemen who came back from the war and had discovered the MG midgets and started buying the TCs and later the TDs, they were used to driving these vehicles.
Right.
And in fact, this felt a lot better than the ones that they had in the military because they actually changed the springing and the suspension, and certainly the tires were a bit better than the ones in the military. But they quickly began to become a favorite of not just the rural set, but of the beach set as well.
Oh, of course. And it's really the same process that even Porsche used later on. Race on Sunday, sell on Monday. Willys, take to World War II, develop the best civilian utilitarian item we possibly can. And this is a great, basically transition out of World War II. And it was a way for them to use what they had learned and make money after the war doing it. And
this is a vehicle, the success of which is hard to underestimate. Between Willys and Ford and American Bantam, they made over 600,000 of these for the military during World War II in a very, very quick time. And even this one, the very first model, they made over 200,000 before going to the next model. And you think about those numbers and they're sort of slightly staggering,
Yeah, especially in that period when people weren't really buying. It was an amazing push from Willys, and they made a great vehicle that really lasted the test of time.
And you and I have chatted before, actually in our exhibition, Colors, the Cars of Summer, about the appeal of the Jeep and what it means to many generations. And that's one of the things which also this car represents in this show, which is the fact that this is a prize winner in the concours in the 30 under 30 class. And our good friend Evan Clary owns this car, and he loaned it to us for the show. And this is absolutely the quintessential idea of being able to get into the collector car hobby in a way that makes sense, that is very relatable.
Yep.
And also, this vehicle is a preservation vehicle. It's had one paint in its original color, and it has not been touched since.
I think Evan and this car are the perfect example of why we have the 30 under 30 class. And we talk about this off camera too. The point of collecting vehicles is not to buy a vehicle, make it perfect, put it in your garage, and make sure it stays as perfect as possible.
Undriven.
Yes. If you want an art collection, have an art collection. If you want to collect cars, use your stuff. And Evan is just an amazing caretaker of this car, and he's had another car in the 30 under 30 as well. But we've seen some videos of him going off-roading with a Willys Club, and they still use these cars how they were made to be used, not exactly putting them away and saving them. So it's an amazing car.
One of the other things, we always try to encourage here at the Audrain, the next generation and the generation after that to become familiar and comfortable with cars. And we're also very grateful to Evan because he said, I'd love to loan the Jeep to your exhibition. And you know what? If you can encourage young people to come in and sit in the car, kids to sit in the car and have their picture taken and hold the steering wheel, because that's how automotive passion is not only born, but is encouraged.
Yes, absolutely. And we talked about this in the last Jeep video we did, but I'm sure for a number of kids, this will be the first time they look down and see 3 pedals, which will spark an entire conversation, which is just amazing. So we're super thankful for Evan for not only lending it, but for being so open with the use of it. He even encouraged us to take it for a drive.
Exactly. Unfortunately, we can't get it out of the museum exactly where it is, but
we'll crawl.
If you happen to go by the museum at night and you see this empty spot, don't call us. Don't come looking for us. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. Did you hear that, David? It's fine. We didn't take the car out of the museum. No, that wasn't us. That was some other guys in another blue CJ2A. But thank you all for joining us here for this segment in our exhibition, History, Luxury, Sport, Automobiles in Newport. And we've studied these 3 cars. We'll be back with more videos to discover other cars in the exhibition and to dive in a little deeper into what they mean and why they're here. Thanks for joining us.
All right, here we go.